All right, so we just want to point out some basic stuff that's easy to do, but a lot of people miss or maybe don't realize how easy it is or what it does. The first thing I've got here is the two business cards on the openers is showing the pinch point, and that there is just slid in from each side. So we slide them together, and you're looking for 1.5 to 2 inch between the business cards, and that is giving you your proper pinch point to get a good V. If you, on the opposite end, I tried to put the business cards in there and they just slide straight through. So at that point the discs are apart when you're planting, and you're actually getting a W trench, so you're not getting a V for the seed to sit in. So that's one thing when you're replacing opener discs. Also, some guys don't realize that that's a measurement that you need to watch. You might get it way too tight, which is going to take your bearings out. Too loose, you won't get a proper V trench in there. And it is a business card, not a piece of paper. That does make a big difference, just the thickness of that. And then closing wheels. So planter population, a monitor is good, but is not as good as getting out and actually seeing the seed that's in the ground. So if you have a variable rate planter, you can lower the planter and just drive across your yard, measure out 17.5 feet, and count the kernels that are in there. However many kernels times 1,000 is going to be your population. So if you have 30 seeds, you're going to get 30,000 population in 17.5 feet. A real quick and easy thing to do to verify your population before you're in the field, not after. That you can do that with a variable rate. Now if you have a ground drive like this, the best thing, and even with a variable rate, is to take the tension out of the closing wheel, tie one up and drive, and you can do two things then. You can count your seeds, as well as you can see your trench that's being created by the V opener, and that'll give you a good idea if you've got the right amount of downforce as far as sidewall compaction. If you're in muddy ground or just hardly fit, then you don't want as much down pressure, or you're going to compact your sidewalls and your root system won't be able to get out there. The other thing, if you're planting, to check your downforce, there's two things you want to look for. One is to make sure your parallel arms are close to horizontal. They shouldn't be hanging down or up. If they're up, then or if they're down, let me get this straight. If you got too much downforce, you're going to have the parallel arms down and the planter frame lifting up. The other thing is, if you're planting and you stop and get out, you should be able to move this gauge wheel with one arm, and it should have a decent amount of resistance. You shouldn't be able to spin that, but you shouldn't need two hands to spin that, or you're going to compact your sidewall too much. Yeah, so that's another thing that a lot of guys forget, is alignment of the closing wheel to the opener disc. And this is actually a good example here. These bushings are quite worn, so as you're going down the field, that thing might be walking one closing wheel right on top of the trench and the other one beside, rather than closing or on each side of the trench. But also, if that's tight, what we do before a planter goes to the field is just do a scratch test on the gravel, and you can see if your opener trench is aligned directly between the closing wheel. These here, guys, are on a cam. They are adjustable to get your closing wheel to trail right dead center on top of the trench. I guess I'll go through a couple more things and then you can go with the yield losses. Chains, drive chains, you don't want them to be stiff or rusty. It will cause chatter in the drive, and you're apt to jump a tooth, which is affecting your population, or just simply the chatter on the meter will also cause it to drop seeds, affecting your population. As far as just a little tip on lubrication there, don't use chain and cable lube. That is probably worse than using nothing. You're attracting all the sand and grit. When you're planting corn, you're obviously in the dirt, and you will wear your chain out faster than what we recommend is a multi-purpose lubricant in a spray bomb. It's closer to a WD-40 viscosity. It's a little bit thicker than that, but it doesn't attract all your dirt and wear out the rollers. Downforce, we talked about that a little bit. There is obviously some of these are not easy to adjust. You can get dual springs or heavy-duty downforce springs if you're not penetrating the way you need to in your soil types. I think Shawn has a few facts on downforce as well.
Where I'm at, I kind of want to give this to you guys in a different way of looking at some of the issues that we can see with planters. Obviously, I'm picking on a 6-row planter. It's probably one of the more common ones around the area. So to work the numbers backwards, it works out quite nice. So I got to pick a field to start with. You know, a lot of guys, places I go to, I do hear commonly, oh, my neighbor's field over there looks awesome. So, you know, I got to pick a field. So I'm going to pick a benchmark field, a field that I watched at the start of this year, and I felt that grower did pretty well everything right in his power to get his crop started properly. So you'll see little papers everywhere. I'm kind of working on different parts of the planter and the unit so that you kind of get an idea. So a benchmark field, we were targeting 34,000. We've got 32.5 harvestable ears. It gives us, with the estimating that we do, we're running about 203 bushels is where he's sitting right now. $4 corn, that's $812 an acre. I actually have cobs here as we go through, so, you know, benchmark cobs, you look at them, they're full, they're all about the same size, very consistent throughout the field. So that's what a lot of my numbers are going to be based off of, is right there. So Dean had talked there about driving and checking your monitor to what's actually coming out. So I have an example where a grower this year, his monitor was reading proper. In actual fact, there was a problem with the planter. In the course of the year, though, he never set the planter down to check visually what the seeds were doing. So I have his paper up on the window if you want to look at it later. He actually comes out with a stand of 26,000 when we were targeting 34. I did his plant population, I did his yield estimate. You know, we're sitting at 169 bushels. A loss of my neighbor's field that was running 203. You know, we're losing 136 bucks an acre. The cost to fix that, you know, whether it be in the row units, need to go get calibrated from Premier, $200. Does a 6-row planter. 20 minutes of taking your time to put the planter up in the air, drive, check your seeds. 136 bucks an acre. Most people are growing more than 2 acres. Right? Your cost of return there is 1.3 acres. Okay? It's stuff that we need to look at. It's numbers on the return. Dean had mentioned the drive chain. I saw it once this year on a planter. The gentleman put his planter away last year with full tension on his springs and no lubrication. I couldn't even bend that chain. So every time it came around the drive sprocket, it was jumping. It was skipping. So we've got skips throughout the field. So his population goes from 34,000 down to 30,000. You know, he's looking at 184 bushels, which is still respectable for this year. It's still great. A lot of years, that's what we would take. But compared to our benchmark of 203, you know, we're losing $76 an acre. To replace 6 drive chains is $88. 1.16 acres return on investment right there, right? So I look at that number, I talk to a lot of people, and I commonly get, well, I only plant 80 acres a year, so okay, I'll change my chains once every 10 years. Maybe we should be doing it once a year, right? Drive chain, if it's going to cause that much of a gap for 88 bucks, it kind of works in. The other one I have that I've seen lately is just poor seed to soil contact. So poor germination or variable germination can be a 5% yield loss right off the bat. So this planter does not have seed firmers. This situation didn't come from this planter, but we still have a stand of 33,000 in that field, which is still a good stand, but with germination being all over the place, pollination came in stress times versus good times. Our yield is down to 164 on that. John Deere has a new seed firmer that goes on these planters that Dean brought today. A little bit different than the heating. It just kind of zip ties onto the seed tube and directs the seed down in. We're losing $156 an acre on seed to soil contact. We can put these on for $364, and in 2.5 acres, your return on investment is there. So it's little parts and little maintenance things that we need to look at these planters to make sure that we're getting the best bang that we can of a situation that we can control. We can't control Mother Nature, but we can control these planters, these maintenance units. The other situation I just want to touch on quickly that's a little different is a lot of us are trying different tillage practices. We're going to min-till, just going into the wheat stubble, scratching with a cultivator. When you're dealing with these planters, the one thing I can't emphasize enough, when you're doing the transition from a deep tilled part of the field into the min-till, get out and check your planter, please. You need more down pressure. You probably need to put the seed in the ground a little bit deeper. And I was out in fields today where one side of the farm versus the other side, we're looking at 40 bushels difference. And that's the only factor in those fields is we started planting on plowed ground, nice and fluffy, great conditions. But as they came across and they got to the line, they just kept on planting. And no difference was changed. And 40 bushels for 20 minutes of your time to get out there and make sure that seed's in the ground, it will add up at the end of the year. The last factor I have is actually speed. Was in a field this year, I was driving a little too fast. When I got there, starting to see seed on top of the ground. He was driving 6.3 mile an hour, which doesn't seem too fast. I know a lot of you think that you want to plant at that speed. The germination right now is sitting at 26,000 in that field. So we got him to slow down, made better placement, better seed to soil contact. His plant population on the other side of the field is 33,000. There's $152 an acre difference between potential profit there. Again, for 20 minutes, half an hour of your time to make sure that you're doing it right. A mile an hour at the end of a day, a 15-hour day with a 6-row planter is 19 acres. But if you're losing 152 bucks, I think the 19 acres is better worth being planted the next day at the right speed. So I want you just, what I'm trying to say is some of these controlled features that we have control of aren't that expensive. But we need to look at them a little bit closer to get the best return on that seed corn bag that we're buying. Okay? With that, I'm done.
So I just want to reiterate, there's a few simple things, like just checking your population in your seed trench. I have to tell people that every year to confirm their population that the monitor is actually showing, and it's something that's so easy to do. Just don't forget about that. Couple other things, like Shawn mentioned, for a couple $100 you can have your row units tested and make sure they're up to snuff. Now, that's only part of the battle. If we have loose hardware or gauge wheel arms that are worn out, all that stuff is going to make a difference as well, even if you have a good meter. We offer planter inspections for roughly $30 a row, so a 6-row planter. You're looking at $180 for an inspection, and you can feel confident that it is good, or you know what your problems are, and you can decide what you want to do or where you want to spend your money. You don't have to be afraid to get it inspected. It's not going to be a big cost to do that. Ignorance is bliss, but it's not always profitable.
So I know we're a long way away from needing this piece of equipment again, but just think about this when you're going down the field, you're watching the corn feed into the combine or into the harvester. You know, you start seeing different size cobs come in, you may be going with the harvester, you're noticing gaps. You know, think about back to your planter on what you need to look at, what you should look at this winter to make sure that this piece of equipment is ready to go next year. You know, I get a chuckle when I'm out talking to guys every once in a while, and they're really happy when they've bought a fancy new combine. At the end of the day, in my mind, this tool here is more important on your farm than a combine. There's more potential for profit to be made planting properly and more accurately.